Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. So I got a ton of questions about my talk yesterday. So I thought rather than doing something different, I would kind of clarify a couple of things. So number one, a lot of people had questions about real estate. How do I start investing into real estate? So let's back up and remember some big picture ideas. Number one, you do not want to run into any of these things, okay? You before you invest in stocks, before you invest in real estate, before you invest in bonds, before you invest in any of those things, you want to make sure that you educate yourself on those topics tremendously before you start. Warren Buffett has always had a sign on the outside of all of the offices and around all of his business. It says, our investment model. Rule number one, don't lose money. Rule number two, take a look at rule number one. So when you start any of these things, you want to make sure that you educate yourself as best as possible. You get the best advisors as possible, meaning professionals that you work on these things. And you do not just run into any of this stuff. You don't run into real estate. You don't run into stocks. You don't run into bonds. These things are complicated, and you need to educate yourself a great deal. Secondly, if you're going to invest in real estate, number one, start with where you know. So you start local. You start in an area that you have a tremendous knowledge about that market. Okay. Number two, educate yourself on how to do it, because there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can invest in low income real estate, HUD type stuff. It's got higher margins, but it's just like stocks. It's got much higher risk, and it's got much higher effort that needs to be taken. Depends on what your skill set is. You can invest in individual houses, but those have their own risks because you only have one door. So if it's not rented, you're not making any money. You can invest in multi-family units, greater return, much greater reward, and much easier to get financing. But obviously you need a lot more cash to get involved in something like that. You can get involved in commercial. Again, higher reward, higher cost, a little bit riskier. So number one, you got to pick what you like, okay? If you're a person that's really good at fixing up houses, and you know how to do carpentry, and that's a hobby that you want to have, then maybe you're a flipper. Maybe you're not a renter, you're a flipper. Your idea is to buy a depressed house in a very good market, fix it up and sell it, okay? So you got to decide what works for you, but the big thing is to not just go flying into any market or into any investment model without studying. This stuff takes time and it takes effort. Trust me. I've been the guy that's run into things, and unfortunately for me, the first time I did it, it worked out. I ran into stocks and it worked out great. So then I ran into real estate. Well, when I first ran into real estate, that didn't work out great. Read books. Grant Cardone has got a ton of great stuff. When it comes to real estate, I really like his stuff. I think Dean Karnazes has got a lot of great stuff. Rich Dad Poor Dad guy has got a lot of great stuff. Couple of rules with regards to real estate that I just think are a really good idea. Number one, don't ever get more than 60% leveraged in your real estate. So what that means is if you have a $100,000 house, you don't owe more than $60,000 on it. There's all these things where you can get zero money down and blah, 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 blah. You do the zero money down stuff when you own 20 houses and they've only got, 60% leveraged over the entire 20, so you've got a massive amount of equity that you can borrow against. That's when you start doing the zero money down. You don't do that zero money down stuff at the beginning. You got to start slow. Remember, you can't have a baby by getting 9 women pregnant. It still takes the same amount of time. So never get more than 60% leveraged. Number two, stay within your market. Stay within an area where in terms of what the market is going to be like. That way you can know if you're paying a reasonable amount of money or not paying a reasonable amount of money. You can invest in real estate without owning the entire property outright. There's these things called real estate investment trusts, a REIT, and there's big REITs that trade on the New York stock market. You can actually buy in a stock in a REIT that owns real estate, and technically what you're doing is you're owning real estate. So that's not a bad way to diversify your portfolio into real estate, because the stock is directly tied to real estate in that situation. There's also individual developers who will allow you to invest into their real estate funds at $5,000 increments. Most of them want $100,000 increments, but there are ones out there that will do $5,000 instruments. Now, again, these are not somebody that's backed by the government. If the world falls apart, the government's not going to come in and support these trusts and make them okay. So, a couple of things you got to think about. Number one, look at the track record of these people. Did they survive the last economic crash in 2008, 9, 10? Did they ever file bankruptcy during that? Did they, if they ever filed bankruptcy, I wouldn't go anywhere near them. A president filed bankruptcy on multiple different businesses. If it's a real estate investment trust and they filed bankruptcy in 08, 09, I'm not investing. Number two, have they ever had a capital margin call? What that means is their property devalued so much and they were over leveraged that you had to put in more money. Now, normally that amount is only 10% of your initial investment. So if you only invested $5,000, your margin call would only be $500. Again, I want a company that went through 08, 09, 010 without filing bankruptcy and without a margin call. If they didn't do those two things, see ya, I'll invest another time, because that means they got over leveraged and they were not disciplined. They didn't follow their discipline patterns. If they went through all of that and they didn't file bankruptcy and they didn't have a margin call, then you're fine. Sam Zell is kind of the king of all of this stuff. He owns $5 billion. There are guys, and then you pick the area that you're good at. So if you want to try to be a developer, then that's where you go and you stay in that area and you learn it and you learn it and you learn it. If you want to be a flipper, then do that. And Dean Karnassus has got a lot of great stuff about how to do each of these things. What's the best way to really become a person who's really good at all of these things. If you want to invest in multifamily, then do that. If you want to invest in commercial, then do that. So that's just some basics on real estate. Study those guys, some basic ideas and patterns. I started out in single family, then went into commercial, and now my plan is to go into multifamily. But I did the single family and I did it slowly. You know what I mean? I did a house and then another house and another house. When I first went in and I did a bunch of houses and I did it fast and I was over leveraged. And then 08, 09, 010 came in, and that was a big mistake. So now it's I pay cash or almost all cash for the properties, and then take my time. And lately, what's been working for me is to turn around and sell them on contract. Get a nice chunk of money down, and then sell the property on contract and become the bank. But it's also good to rent those properties. But stay very low leveraged and take your time. 1 or 2 properties. Maybe you spend the next 2 years, because obviously the world's going through a transition right now. Maybe you spend the next 2 years saving up money for your down payments and just reading and learning about these things. This is a good time to kind of stay on the sidelines and see what's going on for a year before you get involved. Don't worry. There's still going to be real estate to be there. Be patient. With the precious metals, by the way, you should keep a percentage of your portfolio in precious metals. A lot of people talk about 10%. Remember that you can own gold on the New York Stock Exchange, GLD, but you're owning an interest in developing gold there. You're not actually owning the metal. It kind of tracks with the metal, but not completely. So I don't own that. My personal opinion is with the metal, I own the actual product and it's in the safety deposit box in the bank, So I don't and I think a lot of people that own metals would agree, don't own it on the stock exchange, own the actual metal. Where you put it is a different ballgame. A lot of people have it in their house. I don't like having it in my house. I don't have it in my house. I have it in the safety deposit box in the bank. There's very little things in my house that are valuable except for my beloved wife and dog. They're worth more than anything. So, and then, with regards to stocks, you got to remember you got the stock market and the bond market, and those operate independently, And as you develop through this, you're going to learn a lot of stuff because there's another side to all of these investments, and that is debt. Another way that you can get involved in real estate is to buy the debt on real estate when it goes bad. That's the same thing in the stock market. You can buy stocks, or you can buy, like lately, the way to invest in the stock market has been to buy the debt on these various companies, not necessarily own their stocks. So it's a whole nother thing. Like I said, when it comes to the stock market, you can be a stock picker. If you want to read, the best book I think on how to pick stocks is called Beating the Dow. I read that book when I was 22 years old, and if I'd have done nothing but just followed that book, that would have been a really good idea. But again, even with that book, there are things that don't always work out. I think having professional money managers is a good idea. There, you got to learn about fees and do your best to try to reduce the fees as much as possible. And then the big thing is to just invest consistently. Every month, every quarter, a certain percentage goes in no matter what. Then the ultimate thing, like I said, is leveling up those buckets. You got to make sure that at the end of each year, you level everything up and you put it back and forth so that those percentages are right. And that's going to make you buy low and sell high at the appropriate times. So, some basic follow-up information on this Sunday. We're going through a lot of tough times. The world is learning a lot of different things and figuring out how we're going to move forward with all of the stuff that has gone on. We've all been through a lot. Humanity has been through a lot in the last 4 years. We can take care of our own area. That's what we can do. And why don't we think about doing that right now? Let's take care of each other. The people that are in your community, do your best to take care of them, all of them. Let's buy local. Let's shop local. Let's donate to local food pantries. Let's donate blood. Let's do the things that we can do to take care of our areas, and then we can move beyond that. The way to get through us is to take care of each other. We're going to get through this, everybody. Have a great day.